before you in your council agenda is a package, a report outlining the latest update on the Collier Dam report. I'm just going to do a short presentation, a short PowerPoint outlining the particulars of that report. The primary issues in this report are to report out on what council asked us in the previous meeting, November 3rd. There's 3 studies that were requested by council, and I'll just give you a brief update on that. So these are the subjects I'm just going to run through very quickly on the Collier Dam review, as you can see on the screen, and each one of these are described on a separate slide. Is remediation required? And this is a question that comes up a tremendous amount on the Collier Dam issue. These are the issues that staff and council have dealt with over the last 18 months. The safety and property damage to downstream residents is a concern. It's certainly the first reason remediation is required. The liability of the city of not dealing with the problem has been identified as a safety issue. Environmental impact in the fishery. The asset management issue that council is well aware of is we have an asset here that is 105 years old, and over time it's going to deteriorate to the point it needs additional work. And lastly, provincial regulations. The provincial regulator, the dam safety section, has said from the reports that we sent to dam safety through engineering studies that the city has undertaken that there is large deficiency here from a spillway capacity problem that has to be resolved. So in the last council meeting on November 3rd, council directed staff to go back to Golder and review these 3 issues, and have a couple of pictures of to describe this. But in simple terms, I'll go forward to this one. Water distribution. If we have a peak rainfall condition and the water rises to a point where it's just before overtopping, there's a question of where else water could go and be distributed, and therefore flow away from or decrease the capacity problem to a point where the water would be escaping in other directions. So what Golder did is run computer models of this and found approximately 4 cubic meters, and we'll come back to that number in a minute, would flow over the right abutment prior to the dam overtopping. The 4 cubic meters is a very small amount, and when you get down to the third slide, I'll explain where the water actually goes in the different circumstances. So the first thing is the water distribution that the Golder review outlined. This is the amount of water to flow over. There's certainly some belief in the community that it's a much larger amount, but their studies have confirmed this is the amount. The second thing is the spillway capacity, and in previous meetings this has been raised a lot. The question was to look at spillway capacity again and determine what the actual capacity is. The initial range was developed at 25 to 55 cubic meters per second. To give you a sense of what that is, a concrete truck or a dump truck takes about 10 cubic meters. So it's giving an idea of that size. So the review that Golder just completed, and they talked about this number previously of 50 cubic meters per second, was the capacity of the spillway. So they confirmed that again. But they also stated in their report that failure of the spillway starts at 35 cubic meters per second. What that means is that some of the water is going to go over the size of the spillway, but still go down the spillway channel. And lastly, peak storm event is that how this is all calculated is the total amount of water in a peak storm event is 143 cubic meters per second, as noted there. So you minus the 4 cubic meters per second for water distribution, you minus the 55 for the spillway, there still remains 84 cubic meters per second that needs to be dealt with, or it will go over the top of the dam. And the option that we'll bring up in a moment would deal with that 84 cubic meters per second water. So I showed you a picture of that, of the existing lower dam, the reservoir, and as I say, if it raised to the point, the water from a peak maximum flood would overtop that dam. The vast majority would go over opposed to be distributed in another direction. You've seen this slide before. This is the spillway in normal this is how it runs, and it's nowhere near its peak capacity at this time. I don't have a cubic meters per second. We don't do a calculation on what that would be in each of these conditions. The last one is, this is a slide from December 8th through 10th. This, everybody is well aware, we had heavy rainfalls in that period. It was about 12 hours a day that we had rainfall. There was a number of times during those days that it was quite clear and not raining at all, but myself and a number of other people who reviewed this, staff who've been here for a number of years, have never seen the water come this high. The thing to point out here is the right abutment where the 4 cubic meters per second would go is on the top of the picture. It would go down the side of the spillway and possibly into the forest there in that circumstance. But we hadn't seen it actually come at the bottom of the picture onto the flat play area or picnic area there. So it was one of the highest certainty staff have seen. And this was not a very high rainfall event. So the message here is that the spillway capacity is still not being reached in this circumstance, and the spillway could certainly take more water, but it's nowhere near the 85 cubic meters per second that is its capacity. So what the ultimate drainage course proposed was, and we've also seen this with 2 different routes proposed. This is where Golders determined it's most feasible to construct an alternate drainage course, or to call it an auxiliary spillway, is in the location as noted, which is the shortest distance to the Harewood Creek, and majority of councillors have walked the site and seen this, that what would happen is a drainage course would be constructed there, and I'll show you the dimensions in a moment. So before you is the spillway concept from Golder, which is looking at from bird's eye view or straight down on it, which is at the left-hand top corner would be the reservoir. The water would drain through a labyrinth down there. It would drop down into the drainage course behind, which is shown as lined with riprap or a rock base, and it would that spillway would be approximately 80 meters long. It is drawn as 10 meters wide with 10 meter side slopes on each side for a total of approximately 30 meters. The whole goal, and if this spillway was pursued, would be to try and minimize the size of it, both in the width and particularly the sidewalls, to get to a point where there's as minimal evasiveness as possible. So the options for council, and the council's seen all these before, the number 5 is as noted on the screen, and the projected costs. So we brought before council the concept of an RFQ, sole source to a company who came forward, who proposed to do this work. We certainly talked to them recently, and there would be a number of steps taken if we would pursue that, or council directors pursue that. Number 3 and number 4 is what the technical committee who worked from last September to July of 2014 to look at various solutions, the labyrinth spillway and the overtopping. There's been a lot of concern raised about both those options from many people in the community, and after a further review on site with the engineers and the Colby Park Preservation Society representatives, there was a question of could we review the drainage course swale again, which is number 5, which I've just outlined. So that's the third part of the report that we asked Golden to produce. 1 was the water distribution, 2 is the spillway, and 3 is this drainage course. You have the estimated costs down the right-hand side. The reason why number 5 is a wide range, it's only in concept. They've only done very minimal design work, and therefore can't estimate to a closer amount at this time. So in summary, is remediation required? Yes, there's many issues that have been raised by, certainly from a technical perspective, remediation is required. Is the auxiliary spillway a reasonable option? By all means, it's approximately 2/3 the cost of the other options. It has some cost-saving measures that we think could be achieved, possibly could raise, take that cost down even lower. And it could be, it really allows for the existing dam and spillway to be preserved. It's getting summer. It's a very tight time frame. If we're delayed a number of months, we don't wait with the construction. There's just not enough time to design it, tender it, and construct it. And funding sources, all the council knows this is very challenging to find funds to do this, but certainly staff will bring forward a report in that regard. So the last slide is next steps is council either proceed as recommended in the council report with the auxiliary spillway or to identify another option for your consideration. So that's my following. Certainly answer any questions.
Thank you. Do you have questions for Mr. Swade?
No, that's not okay.
Councilor.
Citizen Bob, same as love.
That's okay.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Seaver. We started this way back when there was the seismic risk. We proceeded in the first part, the staff part, prior to October 2012, delivery of, so we based our seismic on scientific assumption. With our first report, we spent $1 million. And then with the public involved, we went and did scientific evidence. So we went and drilled holes and checked for steel and that. So the first part of our seismic risk, that a lot of the assumptions of the dam safety branch and all the flooding and all the exercises we did with dam safety was based on a scientific assumption of the seismic risk and catastrophic failure. When we did scientific evidence, the 1.2 million with the Polygon Preservation Society, we came up with evidence that the dam came out in bad condition. Currently, the flood and overtopping, is it a scientific assumption or is there scientific evidence? How do we ground proof? How is Boulder ground proof? Because I still think we have the assumption of a 2/3 of a 20,000-year flood, which is engineering, in my view, a crystal ball. We don't have scientific evidence on that flood, do we?
Certainly, first of all, is the spillway capacity problem was identified before the seismic was identified approximately 10 plus years ago.
92.
Yes, so both issues were always under consideration. They're quite right, we've done much more study in seismic. The issue is that in the first study that was undertaken, there was not a study done on the technical components of the dam. The studies were done on removal of the dams and how that could be accommodated. When the removal concept was taken off the table, then the engineers at that time reviewed the information they had to determine what the capabilities are. But structural analysis of any structure, be it a building or a dam, certainly the only way you can get more definitive information is drill it, and that was certainly a success that has happened in this work with Goldberg. So yes, there is much more detail in the seismic, but the point is they're not, they're going to fail still in a seismic event, but they won't fail in a catastrophic method or event. But they will crack and they will get to the point where they potentially will fail. So get to your question on what information do we have on the spillway capacity. That is what council asked us to go back, and we did the calculations in very much detail on how much capacity is there, and those are the numbers that were up on the board. They're not assumptions, they're technical calculations on computer analysis.
If I can, there's a couple of different methodologies to determine that. One is, I can't think of the name of the two methodologies to determine some of that flow. Emphasize that, and the hydraulic jump at the beginning of the spillway for that flat piece that causes the hydraulic lift or jump.
Yes,
Calculating the spillway from the angle drop versus the flat spot.
they've looked at it in a number of different angles. The current method, the most advanced is the ECRAS method, which is a computer program. But certainly is they come up with in 3 reviews is the range. Originally we were talking 35 cubic meters as noted on the calculation there, but they've come back and said it's 55 cubic meters per second.
If I can't get then so from 35, if I increase by 20 to the 55, and I've already increased a lot of dramatic, and that's a huge increase notification and gave you indictment. And do we need to continue to ask you for 9 new things, or can you come up with a bunch of different options? Or we seem to be stuck always getting one option or 2 options. We were told, tear it out, dying. Then we're told, oh, it's not bad, it'll still crack. Now we're told, gonna collapse. We got to spend $6 million because there's $2 million damage downstream. So, assumption, scientific assumption, the studies confirm through scientific assumption, this is it.
They're not scientific assumptions. That's why you asked us last time to go back and ask Gold if they're running their computer programs by professionals who specialize in this. We're having a discussion back and forth about the particulars of this. This is engineers' work, and they're the ones that we hired. And we've hired 5 different engineers on this same dam, and they've all said the same thing, that we have a severe spillway capacity there.
At the 23,000 you're flooding.
Now, at a peak maximum flood, which is a calculation of 2/3 the peak maximum flood plus 1,000 meters. That's what engineers design around. They design bridges around the worst case scenario. They design hurricanes. Engineers design to a
Is
rate.
most of our road designed on the Bowen roads? Most of our roads are 200 here, flood capacity. Most of our highways are 200.
Oh, but that's a totally different situation. Is flood rising to the point it may come over the side of the bridge. We designed it higher so it could handle that flow. But in this circumstance, they don't have the reservoir situation. That's just a river flow.
So now we're going to go to, seeing no other speakers, Council, we'd like to go to delegations. And I would again ask that we be respectful in fact finding and so on. So first one up is Mr. Fred Taylor.